James Merriman applauding. Oh, look at this. Henry caught it. Oh! Twisted Henry just sacrificed the body. He goes hard into the woodwork. He had to commit to pain to keep that ball out of his nets. Chance at the other end. Williams across the goal. Bonson's won it. Walter Bonson has won it at the goal for Valor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. My name is Christian Jack. We've missed you. You certainly missed us as well. I know we've not been here for the last couple of weeks because we've been busy. We've been chasing games all around the country, midweek games and different storylines, but we're back and thankful to recap what was a fantastic week 24 in the Canadian Premier League, a week where we crowned a regular season champion and another team clinched a crucial playoff spot, while the race to secure the other final playoff spots has turned into a stroll rather than a sprint as those teams continue to drop points surprisingly. And we'll get into that later as well. We start this week, though, with two games on Saturday that happened in Ontario as they created the biggest storyline of week 24. We'll bring in our very own Charlie O'Connor-Clark, who joins me first. Charlie, heading into the weekend, Cavalry had a 6-point lead over Pacific and a 7-point lead over Forge with just 3 to play. That meant this. If Cavalry win against York, they win the league title if Pacific did not win in Hamilton. Charlie, you were there for both games. The first game of the triple header on Saturday. Cavalry got their side of the job done with a 1-0 win that wasn't convincing, but was enough. What did you make of this game? And was it like watching champions-elect before they even got awarded the trophy?
It was in some ways. Obviously, Cavalry have been in an incredible form the last few weeks, and when you watch them play, you can see that there is that focus and that maybe driven energy around them, knowing that they completely controlled their own destiny down the season, no matter what happened in that second game that night in Hamilton. They knew that if they just continued to get their job done and do their business, they would end up being the regular season champions. And they came into this game in York, as they have approached a lot of their away games this season, knowing that all they had to do was find a way, and that's kind of what they did here. This was not the best performance of their season, not of their 7-game unbeaten run. Charlie Trafford said after the game he felt it was one of their worst of the season, but they won 1-0 with a clean sheet on the road, which says a lot about the standards of this club and how high they hold themselves. And he's right in some ways. 38 final third entries for Cavalry is their lowest of the season in this game, obviously against a York team that is fighting for their lives, as we'll get to in a sec. But again, Cavalry find a way. They get through that one time, courtesy of Meyer Bevan playing Camargo across for that goal. And that's really all they needed. I mean, York had a couple of chances, but it felt like, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. said after the game that there were moments where it just felt like there was a force field around Dan Klomp and Eric Kobza and Marco Carducci keeping the ball out. And in many ways, you make your own luck in football, but certainly it just felt like almost destiny for Cavalry to win that game that day.
Yeah, it certainly did. I said on the broadcast that I think the old Sir Alex Ferguson Man United would always say that they were happy with those 1-0 wins, even when you don't play well. And They earned that, right? They earned the ability to have that benefit of the doubt factor because they played so well over the long stretch. We're going to do a deep dive more into Cavalry a little bit later. But Charlie, being the fact that you spent so much time with them, I know we were with them Friday night for some more content as well. And then you were there at the game on Saturday. What impresses you the most about this group, and particularly their mindset as they headed into a weekend that some things they could control and others they couldn't?
Yeah, you can tell that there's kind of a tone set around this club by some of the people that have been there since day one. Obviously, Marco Carducci, the captain, Sergio Camargo, the goal scorer in this not technically crowning game, but the last game they played before they were officially champions. Maybe it's a little bit fitting that he is the goal scorer. And obviously it all starts with Tommy Wheeldon Jr. at the top, just setting a tone of focus. And they kind of have made sure this season in many ways that they're not particularly interested in what's going on elsewhere in the league. They're not always particularly focused on what the other team is doing. They play their kind of football. At least they try to at the start. In games where maybe that doesn't work immediately, they've shown an ability to be flexible and to change what they have to do in a game, like they did against York. They shut down a little bit, they sat back, but the way that they carry themselves certainly feels like champions, right? They're a team that enter any stadium in the CPL, and they feel like a big club coming to town, right?
Yeah.
They certainly have earned that reputation over the years of being a hard team to play against. But there's something maybe a little bit more intangible about them this year, where it almost just felt like it's about time for them. It is their time after 5 years of being one of the top teams in the league with really nothing technically to show for it. And they've had a chip on their shoulder about that for a while. And certainly this was the year they came in and decided that, it's time, we have to get it done.
Yeah, 12th win in their last 16 games in the CPL, which is a remarkable stat. Here's Tommy Wheeldon Jr. and his reaction from York Line Stadium after this one.
Yeah, I think that's it. It was a gritty performance versus a pretty performance. And that's what, it's interesting. And Charlie, I just heard about what he'd said after the game, giving man of the match. I think this is what this team's about, is there's a humbleness and a hunger about them that, we haven't won anything just yet, so we're still hungry for that. We were good first half, average second half, but we thought if we're not going to connect on passes, we'll just see the game out, and we relied upon that a little bit too much. I encouraged them afterwards, but so many of them went, yeah, sorry, Gaff, wasn't my best performance today, we can be better. And that's the spirit you want going into the business end of the season.
We'll get to Cavalry in a second. They did their end. We're going to bring in Mitchell in a second to talk forward. But before we do that, a word on York United, Charlie. 3 straight losses. Improvement, do you think? What did you overall think, before we hear from Martin Nash, what did you think of the team, having been at York Lions a lot particularly during this difficult run for them? Again, Mo Babuli was suspended. He's back next week, thankfully, for York United fans, and they're still in this race. We'll get into that in a second. But overall, what was your take from them in a game that was pretty close?
It was certainly better, not quite enough, I think. That's probably about how Martin Nash would see it as well. He kind of sends a message to begin this game with 6 changes to his starting 11. Obviously, when you get battered at home, as they have been the last 2 games, and especially last week against Pacific, you have to set a tone with that. You have to bring new blood into the lineup. They were much, much better defensively. It was a bit of a different look back 4, with Johnny Grant and Caden Martin-Peru playing at the fullbacks. And Martin-Peru, by the way, had a very difficult job in his first start for the club against Ali Musi, and he did very well, I thought. And then Paris G coming in at center back. They were a lot better and a lot more organized at the back in this game, I thought. Maybe still didn't have the movement or the dynamism up front that they needed to really get into those final areas. There were maybe a couple chances where they probably should have done better with the final ball. The execution and the finish wasn't quite what they wanted. But again, there was improvement. Probably not quite enough of it for Martin Nash's liking, because they have shown an ability to play well against Cavalry in the past this year. But again, at the end of the day, they remain alive, and they know that right now all they really needed from this game was the response, and that they will go into next weekend at home against Atletico Ottawa with everything, literally everything on the line, and it's going to be basically a make or break game for them at this point.
Yeah, remarkably, they're still there. 3 straight home losses, and they haven't played well enough in any of them to get the win. Let's go back and hear some reaction from Martin Nash. He was certainly a lot more positive than he was a week earlier when they got beat by Pacific by 4 goals to 1.
Yeah, I felt I got the response I want. I thought it was improvement. I can only think of the goal that they had really had a shot inside the 18, so I thought we did a lot better there. We created chances, especially in the second half. We had them pinned in. We just nothing fell our way. I think Johnny had a great chance. Austin was in behind, had a really good chance. Marco did well, made a couple of good saves. So I think it was there for us. I think, if you look at the game as a whole and the chances, I think a lot of people would say a draw would have been a fair result today at minimum. But, got the effort I asked for. Now we need to produce that again next week, because we're not out of this yet.
They are still in it, although it's been a while, and it's been since June. That's right, 3 months since York United led 1-0 in a game at home. Their first half records have not been good, and if they want to do well next week, they're going to have to come out the gate. With more on some player reaction, here's their defender. Here's Paris G.
I thought we were better coming off the start, at least. We kind of had an idea of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to break them down. A few mishaps in the first half led to a goal. But going into the second half, I felt like we had decent control going into the last bit of the game, and we had our chances, and we needed to put them away. And maybe one little piece of magic to put on the back of the net, and then maybe we won one. But yeah, I thought it was better, definitely better than last week's performance.
So signs of improvement. York remained 6th on 32 points. What the victory did for Cavalry was put them on 49, 9 points clear of Pacific, who had to win to get back into to make sure that trophy would not go into the hands of Cavalry, not literally, but in terms of winning the trophy this season already as league champion. 6 hours later, Mitchell Tierney was in Hamilton. Let's bring in Mitchell to join both of us. As that game kicked off, we knew there was a lot on the line for both those teams, and Cavalry were watching. Mitch, I think it's a pretty simple 6-word question that has a very complicated answer. How would you describe this game?
Oh man, I mean it's a cliche to call it a game of two halves, but this was a game of 3/3, maybe quarters even. One of the biggest matches of the season potentially in terms of its importance, and had an absolutely electrifying start. Pacific score almost immediately, and then Forge respond a couple of minutes later. And then obviously the match takes a really scary shift when Kunle Dadaluka and Malcolm Duncan collide at midfield. The ambulances come on the pitch. There's a half hour or so delay. And, there's moments even where you question whether the game was going to continue. But thankfully, and most importantly, both players appear to be doing okay considering. Both were stable and taken to hospital. And we'd expect further updates from the club this week, but Kunle's already posted on social media, which is positive, and big credit to obviously the Tim Hortons field medical staff for their response to this. But both teams get sent back to their respective rooms. They come back onto the pitch for a short warm up, and after the break, as they tend to be, Forge just the better side. They seem to respond a little bit better. Shifted Rama into a back three, brought on Sissoko, and played pretty much the exact same system they had done before the break. They get their breakthrough through Pacias' goal. Jordan Hamilton scores late, and they move up into second place in a critical match for them. And now they look heavy favorites to finish there to end the season.
Yeah, really well said, Mitch. Great job by obviously the staff, the medical staff, and everybody at Tim Hortons Field. And our thoughts and prayers continue to be with Malcolm and Kunle. Great to see that they're on their way to their recovery, and hopefully we'll see them back on the field soon. The win from Forge, I think, really showed that this team knows and steps up in big games. We've been waiting for them to get into another gear, Mitch. Ultimately, they knew they weren't going to win the league. Cavalry had secured it by the fact that Forge were going to win it, but there's still so much on the line. Charlie and I spoke afterwards in our reaction. You can watch it on social media about just how much tension was on the sidelines, and Bobby Sminiotis saying how much it meant for his team to win that game. It was clearly a team for me that knew the value of securing second place over what would be a third place game in terms of getting into that knockout rounds right away. Did you see that? And again, this playoff format made a big difference in the intensity.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point on Bobby, and the fact that he didn't shy away anytime he was asked from laying out the importance of this match for his club. And as someone who writes previews on a weekly basis and tries to get Bobby to hype up matches whenever I can, that's pretty rare. And so when he does, you take notice of it. And I'd assume his team, and it looked like it, they took notice of it as well, and they really stepped up in this match. And an excellent performance from them. I thought having Pacias and Campbell on the field at the same time playing as number 9s was a stroke of genius with what Batibanga can do in behind them. And yeah, just as we said, top 2 is so big. It's such a big difference between 2 and 3 in terms of their ultimate goal, which is to qualify for that CONCACAF Champions Cup. But if they can finish second, and now they look the favorites to do so, they're going to play a playoff match against Cavalry, which they will feel heavily favored for considering the past, and feel really good about going into that one. And if they can do that, they'll host only their second ever final in terms of hosting it. So that's a big deal for them as well. So yeah, I think that it was obviously a massive match, and as they always do, they played like it.
Yeah, they certainly stepped up when they needed to. Here's some thoughts of their head coach. Here's the aforementioned Bobby Sminiotis after this one with reaction at Tim Hortons Field.
Take away the first 5 minutes, I thought it was very good. It's after the first 5 minutes is exactly what we wanted on the pitch, what we wanted tactically from the guys, exploiting certain areas. The goals come from those situations, which we thought we could work on against them. I think Poku's been brilliant. You know, he's a player we've missed in the last 2 games and throughout the season with little injuries and so on. But his quality is there on both of those service into the box and just the play running up to that. And our attackers have done the job, and Rama's also done a job today, his first goal, and it's a great reward for him for all the hard work and effort he puts in, you know, for us on the defensive end of the ball. But I think we've done a very good job, and then, you know, the game, it starts becoming tense as you get past that 70th minute. You know, both teams start realizing what the points mean. You know, after 90 minutes, where it'll meet for each team, they start pushing a little bit more. We start sitting, and you know, we know if you keep a very good compact block from them, you'll deal a lot with crosses. And I think we did a good job from that, and just find your moments from there. And great on the subs who've come in; they've all done a great job, and I'm very happy for Jordan and that goal he scored.
Big win for Forge, just their fourth home win this season in the league at Tim Hortons Field. They were excellent, and for more on their tactical adjustment, read Mitchell Tierney's analysis. Great stuff at campl.ca. Mitch, what about Pacific? As good as Forge were, Pacific did have chances. They led in the game. Reed had a great chance in the second half. But in the end, they got nothing. They started to have some disagreements on the pitch in front of people afterwards. They held a long meeting inside their dressing room after the game, which meant they didn't show up for any media availability after the match, after that was withdrawn. So what went wrong there? And is there concerns?
I think there's certainly concerns. And, you know, first of all, they had a perfect start. They score, you know, less than 3 minutes into the match, but then they immediately turn around and allow one the other way. So that's a really tough start. And then, you know, I think the Data Luke injury is massive for them. That's a player that, especially recently, but throughout the season, is a real difference maker down that side. And a big part of Forge's game plan was, you know, around neutralizing Kunle Data Luke, was something Bobby said after the match. And all of a sudden, you know, Poku's freed up to deliver service and just focus on the offensive side of the game. And then, you know, an aspect of their game that is usually so good in terms of dealing with aerial threats was questionable for me in this match. And you look at, you know, almost immediately out of that break, Pasillas hits the crossbar, and then they almost score on a play that's basically a carbon copy of that in terms of, you know, just the same cross from the same area. So concerns there. And then at the end of the day, I mean, this had to be a real sobering moment for a group that would have known with this loss, you know, their chances at the regular season title that they'd led for large portions of the season were gone, but also they're out of, and they've lost their control of the destiny in terms of finishing top 2. So a really tough moment for Pacific Football Club. And I think understandable that they're really looking in the mirror and looking at each other and trying to figure out what went wrong so that they can, you know, have a positive end of the season that to this point looks like, you know, it could end up being empty-handed after so many promising moments.
Yeah, all of that, those 2 games, those results mean the battle of the top seeds. Cavalry secured in first on 49, Forge are second with 42, Pacific third on 40. Charlie, I've kept you around for a reason. Let's do a couple of minutes here on Cavalry as regular season champions, just a special group who finally get it done. Your overall thoughts on them and what we've seen on the pitch. It was a difficult start with those consistent draws about handing back points from winning positions. But in the end, looking back, they were positives, Charlie. No, the fact that they had so many wins that were taken away from them. Dare we say it could have even been a better season than what they've had so far?
I mean, it could have, but probably not much. I think the thing that's impressed me about Cavalry, we talked a lot earlier in the season about starting the year with 4 draws in a row. It felt like things are a little bit frustrating, and players have even voiced that to us recently, how that stretch was tough for them, and it felt at times like maybe this system they were trying to play weren't working. They were questioning themselves, they were questioning what they were doing, and then it started to click a little bit more after those 4 draws in the first few games. They had, I think, one in early June, but they only have 1 draw since June 3rd in the season. It's just been, and that was the 0-0 at Forge a few weeks ago. They've been better than anybody else in 1-goal games. They've won 14, and 9 of them have been by 1 goal. They've got 5 draws, as we mentioned, and only 3 losses in 1-goal games. This Cavalry team just, you know, makes themselves incredibly difficult to play against. They've been really the best team in the league for probably about at least 3 months now, I would say, as we get towards the end of September. And we mentioned Pacific kind of being 6 points clear at one point in the middle of the summer, but Cavalry's momentum has just really not stopped since they started to click at home. They've obviously had disappointing moments that kind of collapsed, you'd probably say, in Winnipeg comes to mind, the 3-2 game where they were well ahead and but I think they look back at that as a bit of a learning moment, and they haven't really been shakeable since then. And I think for me, not only have they really in the end strolled to the regular season title in the last few weeks here, the fact that they're able to pull out so many of these close games and win by these fine margins also sets them up extremely well in the playoffs, where that's what matters, right? And we can't forget that they are going to play their first playoff game at home against a second place team. They're going to try and win that game and host a CPL final and try and lift another trophy at Atco Field, which is really what they're probably all shifting their focus to almost immediately now.
Yeah, process over outcomes, right? Even the loss in Winnipeg, they were up 2-0 in that game. They gave away a penalty. They lost the goal from a set piece. They played well enough to get something from that as well. Mitchell, I guess final word to you. What's your overall thoughts on Cavalry? What's impressed you about them?
Yeah, I think just their ability to control games from the very start. I mean, I think 21 of 26 matches, they scored the first goal, and then they've allowed just 2 goals in the first half in their last 16, which is incredible as well. Best expected goals numbers in the first half in the league. So often they go into that halftime break with control. And we mentioned early in the season, it was a bit of a concern that they were giving up these leads and squandering the points. But it's, since then, I think it's once in their last 17, it's that aforementioned match in Winnipeg that they've dropped points from winning positions. So they take control, they're able to see it out. And that's ultimately a recipe for success and a recipe over the course of, it's been 26, but it will be over the course of 28, a regular season title.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to watch. We love covering all sport, everything about this sport, but the great thing about it is covering, teams that win things, right? And we've all had a say in that in terms of covering them. They've been a pleasure to cover, and they're not done, no doubt about it. But keep up the great work, Charlie and Mitch. Thanks for having you on the show. And of course, you can read their fantastic work at CanPL.ca. Cavalry, a special group have finally got it done. We sat down with some of their players recently to hear what they had to say about what winning the Canadian Premier League Shield means for their head coach, Tommy Wheeldon Jr.
You have to think about Tommy Wheeldon Jr. as Cavalry Football Club have won the regular season championship and will be the first to lift the CPL Shields.
Tommy is a visionary. Tommy is a manager that is a leader first and foremost.
I think the first word that comes to mind is passion.
I think he wears his heart on his sleeve.
He's a guy that knows when to put his arm around you.
The main thing is he's a winner and he wants to win.
Tommy and I have built a relationship for these last 5 years on trust and on respect. And I think that's what he gives off, and that's what he demands from all his players.
Yeah, I feel like I've understood him my whole life. That's the type of leadership that I think kind of defines this club.
Even when things weren't going our way at the beginning of the season, stuck to the task and really led us through it.
He's a leader by example. He is a big culture piece, and he sets that standard. And I think you see that on the sideline, you see that everywhere. And
he devotes all his time, his life, whenever we're at training, whenever he's not at training, to the team.
It's very easy to be loyal to someone like that and to fight every 90 minutes for someone like that.
We all have a good relationship with him. We all work in the same direction.
And even in the difficult moment, he's always had faith in us. He's always been on our side.
He loves to win, and I think that's why we're all here.
We believed in the process, and we've listened to him, and we're going to run through walls for him.
To do it with someone like Tommy, who I've come to admire, to respect, and I would even say love as a person, as a coach. It's something really special that I'm sure both of us will remember for the rest of our lives.
Joining us now live on the show, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. Tommy, You know, I grew up in the northwest of England. Remember the band Happy Mondays? I'd imagine this is a pretty happy Monday for you, no?
Yeah, it is actually good analogy. Really good analogy. It's still kind of just washing over me, to be honest, because it's one of those, like, it's not like a championship final that you've won and the celebrations go on there. It's a marathon, and to be able to have achieved something as significant as we did and book our place into CONCACAF with the company that's in there now, I think it's all just starting to filter now, and we've done it with 2 home games to spare.
You have, and I love the word significant because it is significant. Let's get into that in a minute, but before we look back a little bit too further, let's look a bit shorter. Take me back to Saturday. So you win at York, you gather everything up, it becomes a road trip, you get back to the airport. I don't believe the flight was too delayed. You get on the plane. What's the mood like? And obviously talk us through following the game and then when it all kind of went off, as we saw in the videos.
Yeah, so it's fortunate now with all the travel miles we have, the guys are able to get into like the WestJet lounge. So what was really cool is they're all walking in their tracksuits, having a bite to eat, and there was a calmness about them, knowing that all we've ever said on this is just do what we need to do against the opponent in front of us, and then we'll take care of or control the things we can control, and that's all we did. So you can at least watch it in a relaxed state because we have got the 3 points, and it was a tough 3 points against the York side that give us hell in that second half. A few battered and bruised bodies, but as we're watching it, staff are over one, players are over one, but you can hear, and the time delay between each was interesting, and the way the game started with the Daniels early goal and then the response from Wubens Pacius, we're like, wow, this is a game. And then I think we're all a bit taken aback by the Dada, Luke and Duncan incident. I think that rocked the lads because, as much as there's rivalries at place, the safety of players and fellow colleagues was pivotal. And, fortunately, I was able to talk to James Merriman after the game as well and get a check-in, but that rocked us. And then we get on the flight, game resumes. I thought Adam Jenkins did a great job in updating people about the health and wellness of the players, but then we watch it, and we didn't think we would be able to watch it in the air, but our video analyst, Daniel Hutchins, got on the One Soccer website, not the app. And for those that do travel with WestJet, do it through the website because you can actually stream the games. And we had one in the front, one in the back, and we had to tell the WestJet stewards that, the flight attendants, that if there's cheers and yelling, please let people know we're not a crazy group of guys on a stag do. This is a professional football team that potentially could win a place in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and win the league. So yeah, that was kind of the story. And then when it did go through, and then there was that feed where at 2-1, it cut because of the delay. And we're like, what's going on here? And we're checking flash score. And then suddenly we chopped back in and said, there's been a goal, there was a cheer. And then I think the celebrations have now been shared. So it was pretty cool.
What a brilliant story. Yeah, don't worry. Don't call the police on us. We don't have to have an landing.
Don't drop us off in Winnipeg on the way back, please.
You spent enough time there in a bubble before.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you get back to Calgary, and then obviously you get to share it, I'd imagine, with some staff members immediately as well, Tommy, who played a big part that didn't make the trip.
Yeah, so what was nice is we had families, friends, and fans that were there greeting us at the airport, which was a nice, a surprise and delight for us. So that kind of got people going, I know. And then everyone separated off in their own way, and some of the players and their wives went out for dinner. And I know I just literally sat with my family just around the fire pit with a nice cocktail and just wow, we did it. So it was really cool experience. And what we're going to actually address the players this morning, because there was some that didn't travel, and we've always said, this is the cavalry, this is the army of people that have been a part of this success. It's not one person that's made us win this. It's been a million little details from lots of people along the way. And I think that's what we're going to do, acknowledge today, the achievements so far, and then we can move forward on what our next challenge is.
Let's get into that word significant then. You are the league champions. You've won something that football people that follow leagues all around the world will have a tremendous amount of respect because of the amount of work that it takes to win that, right? And that's what football are about, titles, and you've won a title here. You've also been remarkably close in the past. One, you could have won titles if they were honored in 2019, but you've been remarkably close to lifting something in the past. Tommy, does it make it a bit sweeter that you actually didn't do that? Like if you had won maybe an All-Star Shield in the past and now you win this, does it make it a bit sweeter that this is your first major silverware, that it is a league title?
No, I'd have collected them all if I could. Because I think they're slightly addicting. And you ask Pep Guardiola, or even I was looking at Sir Alex Ferguson. Someone had sent me, his history, and I think it was his 6th or even his 7th season before they actually won the league at Manchester United. You don't get that amount of time with managers these days. I think it's interesting because when we go into the recruitment market and of the foreign players, when we're talking to players and agents overseas, they always congratulate and say, oh, you won the regular season in 2019, you've won the season in 2020, because if you look at it that way, we tied the points with Forge in what was it, 2021, they had better goal difference. So people, when they do their brief research on us, think that we've got more titles than we actually do. But now I think, like I said, I think it was remarkable from the commissioner to say, look, there's 2 CONCACAF berths to go. Let's make it significant, because I look at what Ottawa did last year. That was incredible. They were incredible, because they got the points. They got the points on the road. They went from last to first, and they should be recognised for it. Forge before that should probably have another league title in it, and ours included. But now you can celebrate both, and I've always said, for the longevity, the purists will always favour the regular season, and the supporters, there's an excitement in that, and we've got both. So let's enjoy both.
Yeah, well said on that one. As you craft a champion, you also have to have that balance between on-field talent and off-field mentality. When did it click to you that this group was different? Was it as early as the preseason? Was there a certain moment this season in a game that this group was different and they had a bit more of that, I suppose, collective wiseness about them?
I think it was a constant evolution is what I'd say, because the preseason, we actually, once we self-reflected, and I think you've got probably interviews with me before, I said we overachieved last year. We actually shouldn't have been just a bad call away from reaching a final. We weren't good enough in a lot of aspects of the game. And we said, right, we have to look at who we bring in. They have to be characters and capable players. We need to have difference makers on the pitch and difference makers in the locker room and in the communities, people that care for the crest. And I think we've worked even through the season when we've made some trades and things like that. It was tough to let Jose Escalante go, but it was for the right reasons, because he wasn't, his family was on his mind. Our goalie, he stepped away. We brought in a new goalie coach in Jake Davis. They were tough decisions to make. Mickey Cantave, he's done great at Vancouver, and in Mile Henry, we've got another young diamond. And all the while, we were trying to create something. We tried inverted fullbacks in preseason. We got beat by Portland Pilots, NCAA team in preseason, and we're like, we got work to do here. And this was just, but we were trying something. And I always go through that forming, knowing, storming, and performing about team building. I'm a big believer. I wouldn't ever say I'm the best coach, but I know how to build things. And I knew I could see the struggles, and there's no success without suffering. And I think we went through that. The biggest challenge was obviously the 6 ties in a row, if you include the CAN champ, and that went to penalties. We hadn't tasted victory for 6 games, and we hadn't really lost. We knew we were onto something. And I think, the Ottawa game at home was significant. I think the Pacific game away, where we took the 2-goal lead, we ended up winning that game 2-1. I thought, because Pacific, the way they started, they were dangerous. And to go and play them at their place and the possession we had, we were right. We found something here. Let's lean into it. And we kept going.
Yeah, some great stories there. This has been a league this year. I was just been in the office this morning talking to the commissioner, a league of what I called leads relinquished, not given up, because I like relinquished because it shows that teams do well when they're behind. In fact, we've had 57 leads relinquished this season. We had 44 all of last season. So teams, it just shows you games that are always going from whistle to whistle. You actually are tied in the league of giving up leads by 11 this year, but most of it is all from the start of the season. You had 8 in your first 7 games, which is remarkable to think. But the big one for me, 7 in your first 8, the big one for me was Ali Musi's free kick against York, because Babuli had tied it again, and you'd given up another lead. And I felt like you needed to learn how to win. What was that like when Musi put that in? I think it was your 7th game, and you got that victory. And finally, we could start saying, hang on, this is a team that's unbeaten and not winless, which is a big difference.
Yeah, it is. And you know, like I said about success without suffering, that when you have challenges, that's the only time you build resilience is through the times that challenge you. You know, when we're winning now, we're not really building resilience. We built that resilience early in the season versus the late. We've often had to learn the hard way through the playoff system. Now we learned it early. Moosey's magic, and that's him. That's him in a nutshell. He's got it in him where he can create something out of nothing. And the way he stepped up, but he rehearses that. So when he's standing over the ball in front of the foot soldiers, there was just this confidence, but it was the move prior that Gote got it. And that's when everyone started to say, "Wolf, this kid can play." I think he skipped past about 3 people on the way to there and was hauled down. And I thought, right, this is the moment now. We've got that dynamism in our attack that can hurt, and then Moosey's quality. But I mean, it's great because you're seeing also Sergio now probably having one of his best seasons with us, most minutes, but he's now scoring important goals, right? When we beat Ottawa at home to beating Ottawa away to scoring the winner at York on the weekend. He's that pivotal, emotional anchor, and Marco making big saves, right? There's been some big players, but yeah, that Moosey free kick was something else and the start of a cracking journey.
Couple more with you, Tommy, before we let you go. You mentioned earlier about what people around the world talk to you about the success in terms of regular season. No team has earned more points in regular season since the CPL started than Cavalry. And a lot of that has also got down to the fact that your home record is absolutely immense. You now come home to play 2 more home games, and if all goes well, you don't need to go away again. That must be pretty refreshing as well to think that. I know how confident you are. You got 2 more home games. You won't take your foot off the pedal. I know against Valor, you get to lift the trophy, but how much are you looking forward now to building a little bit more of that camaraderie in hopefully a long stretch of 4 games at home that can lead to another trophy?
Well, I think with this group, what I've understood from them, and I think you've seen it when you were doing some of the interviews, they're so competitive, whether they're playing Catan or Partners board game or a game of cards or a game of juggle at the end of practice. They're so competitive with each other. So as a coach, and our coaching staff, we have to challenge them. We've still got objectives that we actually want to meet in the regular season, because when the history books are told, yes, we'll have a trophy for it and yes, we'll be first place, but we also want our points total to be a certain amount, our goals for and against to be a certain amount. So we still have targets we want to meet, and I think that's what we've got to do. Our fans are something else. Our pitch, I think has been as good as it's ever been. Credit to our ownership. They replaced the grass last year, and our grounds crew, they keep it so good. Like we train on it when we're in the home weeks, and we're looking forward to getting out there because our fans, like the energy, like it's everything from the families that we have in the section to the foot soldiers and the supporters group that bring the flares, the tifos, the banners, to the kids that wait around afterwards. And our guys are so great in giving their time. You get Marco as the captain. He'll bring the guys out and Dan Klomps, and they'll be signing autographs for half an hour after the game, sometimes even longer, to just give back, because that's what this community means. And you see it with our crowd. It's growing and growing exponentially. We're never going to come in and make a big splash. You got to earn people's time and love over time, and that's what we're doing. And to be able to have the opportunity to finish strong at home is all we've ever asked for.
Yeah, and have the opportunity now to be crowned a champion in front of the fans of Calgary, and bring that trophy to a city that I know is so close to you and your family's hearts. That's pretty special.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Calgary's been great for me. It's my adopted home. They've taken me in, so it's all a case of trying to give this city back. And we've been short of trophies of late, and we've got our first one. And we also know that in playoffs, right, nobody's won at home. So why not be the first? So that's another great challenge to put to this group.
Great points, my friend. Look, winning is hard, right? You know that. That's why I love covering it. That's why you love the seeking for it. Enjoy it, my friend. You deserve it. You're a champion on and off the pitch. A great man. Congratulations on a fantastic season. Not over yet, but thanks for spending some time for us today on this Monday.
Thank you, KJ. Appreciate the time.
Great stuff. The great Tommy Wheeldon Jr., who joined us just a few hours after winning the trophy on Saturday, and they will be crowned the champions of the Canadian Premier League Shield. They'll get to lift that trophy on the last day of the season. Back-to-back home games to come against Valor, and then they can lift that trophy on the last day of the season against Pacific on the 7th. A reminder, you can still play CPL Predictor weekly, brought to you by our friends at TonyBet, campl.ca/predictor. I'll get it out in a second, where you choose the correct scores and you can win up to $20,000 tickets to games. It's all there on the site. Keep playing, because now you're knowledgeable and you can still get all the results right. From the top playoff spots to the bottom playoff spots, we now turn our attention to, and the race is really strange. We've seen what happened to York. What about Halifax? That meant the Halifax win on Saturday in Vancouver. That would have booked their spot with York losing. Alex Gangu-Ruzic was there for us as usual. AGR, in the end, Halifax knew 3 points would have been enough to book their spot in the playoffs, but it turned out to be another remarkable finish as Vancouver FC completed a comeback with a win in injury time for the second successive home game. What was this like? What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver FC, credit to them. They get eliminated from the playoff race. They win back-to-back games for the first time, in club history, which is an accomplishment that definitely can't be ignored. Back-to-back home wins as well for the first time. As it was just a thoroughly entertaining game. You wondered, given what was at stake for Halifax, especially the way they started too, as you can see in these clips. It's all Halifax. It was for the first 45 minutes. It felt like Vancouver could hardly get a touch in the ball, and you kind of thought, okay, Halifax really wants this playoff berth, and heck, even beyond the playoff berth, it's important to note a win for Halifax really would have put them into that mix for finishing second and the possibility of even hosting a final at Wanderers grounds. They're still alive in that race, barely. I mean, it helps that they'll play Forge this week, but to their credit, Vancouver responded to that. They kind of took a punch in the mouth right before halftime, and then it was all them from that point on. They got their goal through Batar, and then they pushed, and it felt like it was a winner. I'll profess that in the press box, I was joking to someone, because it was getting to the end of the game. It was rainy, and someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go try to get a jump on the press box or in the press conference early." I'm like, "There's gonna be a late winner, trust me," and it happened. So I kind of felt like rewarded for that patience in that regard.
I love it. Mystic AGR. You know what that's down to? That's intelligence and seeing things in the past. When a game you go to, usually there's always something in it, and you've been there, you've lived it before, and you're learning from your experiences. I love that. Listen, I want to talk more about this Vancouver team in a second, but before we do, let's go back to the stadium and hear from their head coach, Ashwin Gotby, on the reaction that his team came out in the second half after what was, as AGR said, a lackluster first half.
I'm not sure if you want to hear what I said to them at halftime, but I was very disappointed of the first 20 minutes, and I was very disappointed of the goal we took at such a crucial moment in the match right before the halftime. And I think my message has always been about passion. You have to, every time you perform, every time you play, every time you wear your shirt, every time you have this badge on your chest, you have to give your all. And sometimes I feel that there's a complacency, not just with our team, with all the teams in this league. And I'm hoping that we can change that by creating more competition in this league and bring the kind of spectacle that fans want to see. And our job is to promote this game, and our job is to bring more fans and create more fans. So I think the message was simple. It's raining, people left their house, they're sitting in the stadium without a cover. They're getting wet. They deserve our best. They deserve everything we got. And I think we got that from the players in the second half. And that's how it has to be every half and every game.
Yeah, quite fascinating words. When Ashwin Gotby speaks here in this country, we should listen because he's a football man around the world, and some interesting take there about complacency and, players having to give what they get and obviously give more back to the fan base as well. Vancouver have done that lately, Alex. In fact, they've got 12 points from their last 7 games. They've got 4 wins during that run. What that means is for the last 6 weeks in the CPL, only Cavalry and Forge have been better than this team, during which they've also been eliminated. So they haven't been too complacent. What impressed you again about them and who?
Yeah, and I love the stat as well about the 12 from 7, because if you average that over, it's easy, put times 4 over the full season. It's 48 points. That's Cavalry's just won a title with 49. That's a good amount. It really shows how good they've been lately. And again, in this game, I liked how they won in a different way, because over the last couple of weeks, they put in some good performances from start to finish. And then this one, it was flat, and it was kind of like, okay, maybe that high of winning in Winnipeg in midweek kind of caught up to them. Their legs were flat, and they responded, and they went very aggressive in the second half. They went to more of a 4-2-3-1 instead of the 4-3-3 they've been employing. And some players who impressed are Gabriel Batar, who's he's having a quietly very good end to the season. That's 4 goals in his last couple of games now over the last about month or so. Mickey Kintav came off the bench and immediately brought a spark, and because he's been starting lately, got a deserved rest, came in immediately. Those two, they bring a bit of something different to that attack. So I think you look at some of the other options up front. We know what Alejandro Diaz can do at his best. It's clear that he's still getting up to speed, getting up used to the new team. And he hasn't been able to hit the back of the net lately. Sean Hundal as well has, he's been better at the 9, but Diaz has been kind of holding the 9 position. So Hundal's had to continue to adjust. But Cantave and Batar have really taken a lot of the offensive load over the last few weeks, as their 2 strikers have maybe struggled to find the back of the net. And that's huge, because it shows already this team, they have options in attack. And when all 4 were on the field together, it was fun in the second half. It was pressure. It was different waves. And you add in what Renan Garcia continues to bring in that midfield. We talked earlier in the season about how they were lacking an option at the 6. He's added a bit of solidity. I think this team just has more balance now, and they're able to adjust. They're able to really take it to teams when they want to, and they did that to Halifax. Like, Halifax was visibly struggling to even keep the ball, and we know they don't do that against very many teams or anywhere, and that was a big surprise. And shout out to all those players for helping make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was a team effort, no doubt. And I know you circled Elliot Simmons as being your man of the match in your analysis on Campia.ca as well. Let's go back to the stadium and hear from player reaction, hear from the midfielder himself. Here's Elliot Simmons.
I think it probably comes from, the coaching staff ourselves. Like, we knew starting off that half, we knew it wasn't good enough. I think we're quite disappointed in ourselves as the second half showed we can do a lot better. So I think coming off that first half, knowing we've got to step it up. It's raining, fans have come out, families have come out, so just want to put it right and put ourselves back in the game like we know we can.
Fantastic story developing in Vancouver, and yeah, great to see. It's still, they've still got games to come. They got to play York United, the last home game. Get out there, get your tickets, and support that team. The biggest story, though, was in the league. The biggest story was Halifax Wanderers collapsing in that game and not stepping through an open door to get into the playoffs, AGR, and guarantee their spot. They did play Monday night. They had an emotional win that night. A shorter week a little bit to travel out west. Do you feel like simply fatigue in the second half? Caligari dominated for 45 minutes, but then didn't have the game as much in the ball in the second half. What did you see? Obviously, we give Vancouver a lot of credit, but what did you see from the Halifax side?
Yeah, I think fatigue of some sort, maybe hard to say even physical. It was almost mental at times. I think it was just sloppy. I think that was the big thing. I kind of alluded to it earlier. Just like the first goal for me, that is so unlike Halifax. It wasn't like Vancouver was employing, a strong high press. They were kind of in this mid block. Halifax was playing out the back, and they missed a routine sideways pass. And next thing you know, 2 passes later, it's in their net. I just thought it was, very just sloppy. And I don't know if it was the pressure of the occasion. I don't know if it was just the emotions of the last week catching up to them. But unfortunately, those are mistakes you can't afford to make. And maybe they thought they could come into Vancouver and kind of grind their way to a win, without much thought. But it also shows what Vancouver's been able to do. So yeah, for Halifax, I think it's something where, they're going to have to respond to this. The pressure is on for them. What's nice is they control their destiny. No matter what happens, they win one of their next 2 games they're in. So it's, they can have a chance to look at this, but okay, maybe the occasion got to us. Maybe it was just the travel and everything, because the travel hasn't been easy. You've also only one road game on the, all season, so they can head back to Forge, put this behind them, and, just try to focus on that unique opportunity that they have to just clinch on their own terms, because they just were not near the standard they needed to be in that second half, I don't think.
No, I think the next evolution for them is seeing out games when they're winning them. No, I mean, obviously, I talked earlier about leads relinquished. It's been a theme in the show. Talked to Tommy Wheeldon Jr. about it. Cavalry have 11 leads relinquished this season, tied for the league record with Halifax. Halifax lead the league in 18 points given up from winning positions this year. So, that's a lot. And I know a lot of it came early, but it just goes to show you that they've left some points on the table. That might be a positive if they can see through it. Talking of positive or negative, not too high, not too low. Let's hear the thoughts of Patrice Geyser after this one.
It's one game at a time. If this was our finals or playoff game, we're, probably going to flip this table, but it's not. Like, it's never too high, never too low. And I said this to someone I was doing an interview with. If you look at my reaction to the Ottawa game, I wasn't doing a backflip or running, because I know you're going to be in games like this where you're going to lose it last minute and you're going to win it last minute. Do I think we deserve to lose? I certainly don't think so. I think we won the first half and they won the second half. That's the definition of a tie. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter what I think. It's the actual results that count. And I think they made a lot of impact and they committed a lot of numbers. So, for our guys, it's whatever happened today stays in that change room. We lock it and leave and prepare for Forge the moment we walk out of here. So that's part of being a professional and, being an adult. Like, whatever happens on a bad day, you shrug it off and the sun will be up tomorrow.
Sun did come up, and thankfully the table remained. Big break for the table that didn't get flipped by Patrice because it was still there for the next interview. Is from Zach. Let's hear from Zach Fernandez.
No, for sure. I think, like you said, now we focus on the next one, and I think it's going to be important to prove that we're a team that can be in playoff, and to do that in front of our fans could be amazing for us, for sure. Yeah.
As AGR said, a big one, no doubt, against Forge this weekend. That'll be a huge game as well as we continue. And they're all pretty big at the moment. Thanks, AGR. Appreciate your work. Continue the great stuff at campio.ca and, of course, One Soccer. Final stop of the show takes us to the nation's capital, where we bring in our own Benedict Rhodes, who is our correspondent for this one. Benny, Atletico Ottawa were blessed to be the last team in contention to play this weekend. The team chasing them lost. The team they are chasing lost. They came in winless in 5 after giving up 3 injury time winners this month. Surely in front of a packed, well, not packed, but a big crowd of over 7,000, it was time to turn the tide against bottom club Valor. Did it go their way? Not really. Expect the unexpected. What happened here?
Yeah, like you said, it was a game where Ottawa really had to win this game, I think, to move up in the table. You said the team below them lost in New York. The team ahead of them lost in Halifax. The spotlight was on them to go out and win this game, and despite their best efforts, especially in the second half, they just couldn't put the ball into the back of the net. And obviously, you're not going to win any games if you don't do that. And that kind of let them down in this game. They had their chances. They had, especially in the second half, they really ramped up the pressure in the last 15, 20 minutes, let's say, to really try and put the pressure on Valor and find that late goal. But in the end, for the 4th time in 5 games, it was them on the receiving end. And watching on YouTube here was just one that was, I think, wholly preventable, and they paid the price for it.
Boy, did they ever pay the price for it. I mean, every credit for Valor. We'll get into them in a second, but this is really, really difficult times in Ottawa. Difficult times. This is a time of year where they expected to be lifting and contending for trophies, and they are playing their worst football, and it's not even a debate. Their worst football of the season, comfortably. And when you can't score goals, you open yourself up to losing games. They've scored 5 goals in their last 6 games. Let's think about these goals for a second. 2 of them were absolute gifts. Filion's gift in Halifax, right? We had the Callum Irving gift in Vancouver, just gifts, right? Huge mistakes. We had a Luke Singh worldie, and we had a Maxime Tissot free kick. That's how hard it is. That's 4 of their 5 goals, and another one from Salter in injury time. That's how hard it's been for them to score goals this year. It's been so difficult for them to score. So let's go back to TD Place and hear from their thoughts of their under pressure manager. Here's Carlos Gonzalez.
It's like a deja vu, It's a repetitive situation in which trying to think in a normal state, not thinking only in the punishment of the last minute. I think that we were better than Valor. I think first half was quite equal, but I think in second half we were better than them. We created chances. We weren't ruthless enough in those moments that you have to score and you need to win the game. And another bad action of a detail, of a disconnection, of a bad luck. What can I say? In which you lose the game because of that. So I think that's my resume of the game.
Yeah, bookended, not a great start to the season and not a great finish to the season. They only had 1 win in the first 7. Now they're winless in 6. During the part of the middle part of the season, you could make an argument they were one of the best, if not the best sides in the CPL, Benny. But what's fascinating about this is current coach of the year, Carlos Gonzalez, who's clearly very talented, has got an enormous job on his hands now, has he not, to try and get this team up and get them in to then try and figure out how they can contend.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was July where he was the coach of the month, and Ottawa were looking like they were going to go and maybe even win the regular season title. That's how well they were playing at that point. And in the last few weeks, they've just looked a bit out of sorts. Like you said, the goals haven't been coming, and you said he's the coach of the year. He's going to have to show why now. I think this is the part of the season where he's under the most pressure. Obviously, you want to be not only just scraping into the playoffs, but in good form going into the playoffs. And if they can maybe win these last 2 games of the season, go in hot, they can beat any team on their day. They're very good on the road as well. So if you get that 5th spot, so this is the part of the season now where it's going to be up to Carlos Gonzalez and the players to really say, like, we have to raise our levels right now. And that game against York on Sunday, if they win, they clinch a playoff spot. If they lose, they're 2 points back with 1 game to go. So that game next weekend is going to be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, huge. That's a great point you just made, by the way. If they get in, that's what the message should be, no? Atletico Ottawa's got a fantastic marketing group. Carlos Gonzalez has got his motivational speech already. No one will want to play them, right? That's what they're going to have to say. Like, we didn't win the league. We didn't, they may have to run the gauntlet and finish 5th and not play at home. We don't know. Maybe they will get a home game, but either way, you know how nasty they can be. No one's going to want to play them. There was one positive who came out of it. Obviously, it was the final game, regular season game at home for Mr. Ottawa himself in football. Really, Carl Howarth. It was a tremendous day for him, Benny. Before we hear from him, what was it like to see the players walk out with the shirts on there and just honor a special human being?
Yeah, he's someone that's been so ingrained in Ottawa for the better part of 10 years now. I think it's 2013 when he first joined them as an amateur player, knowing that they were going to get the Ottawa Fury professional team the next season. So to have him be around for that long, and he said he remembers days when they would have 50 fans watching them at a college stadium, and now they're playing in front of over 7,000 at TD Place, and to see that evolution and how integral he's been to that has been pretty special to see. And you and I have covered Toronto FC, for example, for a long time, and anytime you heard about the Ottawa Fury, it was always they have this great right back who scores lots of goals, and that man was Carl Howarth, and he's been a legend in Ottawa for so long, and to see him honored with his family on the field and the huge standing ovation he got when he left the field as well, it was very special to see.
Really special to see, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the first thing about him is just a class act, like a good human being. Just be a good human being and you'll get what you deserve. That's the hope, and he got everything and more what he needed. Here's some thoughts after this one from the Atletico Ottawa skipper.
Result aside, it was still, I think a happy day for me, a good send-off, if you will, if we're not able to kind of take care of business and get another home game. To see so many familiar faces in the crowd was something special. People who I've seen 10 years ago and kind of grown with them, grown with football here in the city. It's been emotional. Nice to see. To have my family here in town as well, to share that moment with them was pretty incredible as well.
Every credit. Guy born in Southport, right? Grew up watching the Premier League, big Everton fan, and again, another Canadian football player, Canadian soccer player, whatever your choice is, who did a lot more than many people thought they would, and that's a real credit to him and his family. A quick word on Valor. Not easy for them. First time winning back-to-back away games in 15 months after a difficult loss midweek at home to Vancouver. Here's the thoughts of their head coach. Here's Philip Dos Santos.
So when you get in moments like that, you want to see the integrity of the guys and how they're going to stick to finishing things off in a professional way. And it was a hard week for us, very difficult emotionally, and sometimes, you had playing on Sunday, losing a game that we felt we shouldn't have lost once we went up 2-1. Then you lose a game also with an individual mistake or collective mistake on Wednesday, and you have to fly here and play another game right away with what I consider being even more of a wear on the players. It's the emotional one. So for them to come out and respond in a very difficult game, difficult because there's the pressure of the opposition, there's an environment where we know what this game meant or meant for Ottawa. So to come out and be able to absorb some of the low moments we had in the game and then find the goal is a demonstration of character. And there's just some guys in our group that we're proud to have, and you know, the team responded today, but there's guys that you look at and you say, from day one of the season, they were just warriors, and hopefully we could just build from this.
They'll look to build on that in 2 more games against teams who've got a lot to play for. They've got a Cavalry next. That's never easy. And Halifax at home to end. So still games to play here, Benedict. They're of importance for this team.
Yeah, and Randy yesterday said after the game he wants to be the spoiler. He wants to be the guy who steps up in these final games and kind of maybe impacts a team like Halifax, for example, who are going to be playing big games these last couple of weeks. And that's something they're going to embrace. It's too little too late for them, unfortunately, but they definitely want to go out with a bang.
And they certainly do not want to finish last in the table. Thanks, Benny. Appreciate you. Let's take a look at the table in the CPL with 2 weeks left, two weekends left to go in the Canadian Premier League. Cavalry top and done and dusted, 49 from 26. The race is still on for the rest. Forge second, 42 points from 26, with Halifax away and Atletico Ottawa at home to come. Pacific are third on 40 points with 2 to play. Vancouver at home and Cavalry away. Halifax are fourth, 36 from 26. They finish with Forge at home and Valor away. Atletico Ottawa are fifth with 33 from 26. And they go to York this weekend and finish with Forge away. Not easy there. And York are still in it on sixth with 32 from 26. We've been saying that for 3 weeks, but they still have it and they're still in it. They finish with Atletico Ottawa at home and Vancouver away, so they still absolutely have a chance. Here's a look at the week 25 schedule board. 4 games on 3 days, starting in Calgary on Friday night, which will be a celebration, no doubt, as they welcome the champions back to Atco Field, and a reminder they'll lift the trophy on the final home game of the season when they take on Pacific. Halifax Forge on Saturday is the start of a doubleheader, the Tony Bet match of the week. It is named for a reason. What a clash that is at the Wanderers grounds. Pacific at Vancouver, the rivalry exists, the 4th rivalry again this season, and most of those games have been absolutely fascinating to watch. That is at 2 p.m. local on Saturday, and the aforementioned game on Sunday, a clash, wow, an Ontario clash between York and Ottawa, 6th versus 5th for the right to get into the playoffs. 2 more weeks, and then the postseason. As the leaves turn and the air gets cooler, it simply means there is so much more to play for. Ultimately, what that is to accomplish things of real significance, to leave a lasting impact and win something with a group of people, for a group of people, and for a region. That was certainly something Tommy Wheeldon Jr. has had on his mind for some time. Finally, he got his wish, and he brought a title to Calgary, Alberta.
Yeah, I think we've got that, you've always had that healthy chip on our shoulder for the way 2019 was. I mean, I'm not sure, even this group is ever going to get to that points total. And we had nothing to show for it. And that's one of the most dominating regular season performances. And the way the spring season was meant to be was we were meant to go to CONCACAF. We were meant to have those experiences. So we felt like that was taken away from us. So I think now the guys that are still around, and myself included, we've used that as a motivator to say, right, you can't always guarantee things. You got to earn things in this life, in this world. So to see the club, see our ownership group who back us immensely, to see the fans that keep coming out in numbers, you see them in red and green everywhere, to see the players and the young players coming through. I think it would just be incredible accolade, and once you get one, you chase another, right?